It's time. All right. Try and get my brain in order. So we'll call the meeting to order of the Lewiston Planning and Zoning Commission for August 27th, or for our regularly scheduled August 27th meeting. So first item, well, I guess is our second item on our agenda is citizens' comments, since the meeting has been called to order. So this is an opportunity for citizens to address the commission with comments and or questions about planning and zoning commission related matters that are not a public hearing action item on this agenda. So is anybody, are we all here for public hearings? All right, well, that takes care of number two real quick. So moving up on the agenda, commissioners, we have approval of our August 13 meeting minutes. Did anybody get a chance to look at those? I thought they looked good. So if there's no comments, questions, I will take a motion to accept them.
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor to approve the August 13 meeting minutes as presented, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Oh, you're gonna abstain. Okay. Right, motion carries. So next up on our agenda is review and approval of the reason statement for zone change application ZNC 25-2 by Steve Carlton. So did everybody get a chance to look over that reason statement? I thought it looked excellent as always. So if there's no questions, comments, concerns, I will take a motion to move forward or not with the reason
Mr.
statement.
Chair, I will make a motion to approve the reason statement for ZNC 25-2.
Moved, is there a second?
I think.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye to approve reason statement for ZNC 25-2 as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No,
I'll abstain.
I'll abstain. Okay, Kevin will abstain. Motion carries. All right, so coming up, our next item on our, or an action item on our agenda is a public hearing regarding the comprehensive plan amendment CPA 25-1, use of surface and groundwater. And so before I open the public hearing, I'll just do the standard.
That's the next one.
The standard spiel about explaining the public hearing process. So I'll announce the subject of the public hearing like I did. I will open the public hearing. And then we do ask if there are any comments related to the public hearing, that anybody in the audience keep their comments to 3 minutes. If there are any related to this, I'll be lenient with that. But so we'll hear after the public hearing has been opened, a staff presentation. If there is any testimony from the public, it can be provided, either in written, email, phone. And then after that, commissioners can ask questions of the staff, the public, if there are any. And then once the public hearing is closed, there can be no further questions related to the public hearing. And then the commission will deliberate and discuss items related to the public hearing, the relevant criteria and standards. So with that, I will open up the public hearing, and Katie, the floor is yours.
Evening Commission, Katie Hollingshead, Assistant Planner. So this is a comprehensive plan amendment. This is CPA 25-1. So this is amendment brought forth by a change to Idaho code in regards to the use of surface water as primary irrigation water where reasonably available when doing land use changes. So the commission probably has noticed that when you have applications in front of you and we're going through the reason statement, that is a criteria that has been added to those packets. And so this is the code portion, adding it to our comprehensive plan. So in your packet, Joel has included the resolution that contains it. And then portions from our comprehensive plan where those changes would be added to the plan document itself. So you can see under groundwater, we already had a small section regarding it, and so this would add an additional paragraph that says pursuant to Idaho Code Section 67-6508. Friend R, adoption amendment or repeal of the comprehensive plan shall consider the effect on the source, quantity, and quality of groundwater in the area. And then pursuant to Idaho Code Section 67-6537, all applicants proposing land use changes shall be required to use surface water where reasonably available as the primary source for irrigation. And so that one's basically repeated. Also in the section under planned amendment and management, so just so that's in the two places. And then also included in your packet, part of just a section from Idaho Code showing you where it has been added to Idaho Code. And that's kind of it. I would stand for questions.
So the entire purpose of adding it to comprehensive plan is because we want to match and beat the Idaho. Correct.
So when it talks about using surface water, what does that mean?
Rainwater. Water that naturally occurs rather than water being pulled from an aquifer or well.
Or like a retaining pond or anything like that? Like,
A retaining pond could be considered surface water depending on how the pond came to be. A lot of times those ponds are used for stormwater management.
right.
So I think that would be another surface water item.
That's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, but in general, surface water is going to be water that comes from the sky or other
Yeah.
natural sources rather than water we are manually pulling from an aquifer, a river, a lake, another below ground source.
Sorry, I just wanted to give a reminder to the commissioners that when you speak, make sure you speak loudly because we want to make sure the audio can pick you up. And some of you are soft spoken.
Sorry.
And then just as a reference for Cindy's point of why we're doing it. So in Idaho code, it talks about the planning duties of this body. And so it says when considering amending, repealing, or adopting a plan. So anytime we're doing a zone change or an annexation or a comp plan amendment, which those three usually go hand in hand, especially when we're doing annexations. They do reference to our comprehensive plan. So this being added to that is now part of state codes requirements for that plan.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would a Lewiston Orchards irrigation district, would that be considered surface water?
You know, I have some representatives, I think, who could better answer those questions than myself.
Oh, okay, thank you.
They plan on speaking during the public portion.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions for me? Okay, I'm gonna sit back.
All right, well, you will hear testimony from the public, so, for then, Dawn, I'll just check real quick, make sure there was nothing emailed, called in, written in. So it's in the record that we didn't already get, okay. And please, feel free to come up and speak. We just need your name and your city of residence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Barney Metz. I am the General Manager for the Lewiston Orchard Irrigation District. I'm also here today representing the Idaho Water Users Association of the state of Idaho. They are supporters of the overall water use throughout the state in both surface water and groundwater. Where this, as the chairman of the legislative committee that sponsored this legislation that has been adopted and become law by the state of Idaho, was it's difficult to manage the groundwater systems throughout the state of Idaho, and they're all under some form of stress. As we continue to grow and we have additional pressures within those groundwater systems, that stress is going to continue to grow. One of the ways to relieve that stress is to not be using that groundwater for outside irrigation when that groundwater is available. Specifically, this really started to rear its head in the Eastern Snake Plain aquifer mitigation issues that we had over the last several years. And also development and the heavy development in the Treasure Valley. Developers were coming in and instead of electing to use the water shares that were applied to that land from a surface water irrigation district, they found it cheaper in their processes to drill a well and forego that. most of the irrigation districts have an irrigation assessment that's applied to the land. It's similar to a property tax. So even if you choose to not use the water that's available, that patron, that person that owns that land is still responsible to pay the irrigation assessment, even though they choose not to do that. So we actually have started seeing things within the LOID now where there are developers who, in a cost standpoint from their benefit, are choosing to not install the irrigation system and just use groundwater. So Lloyd's domestic water is provided through groundwater wells that we have, and we both have surface and groundwater for our irrigation side of the house. So we made a push to basically say that if that surface water is there and it's available, it must be used first, and it's not an out option for you. So areas that are eligible for both surface and irrigation water within the district will be required under state law now, and in our support of the city adding this to the comprehensive plan to ensure that that surface water is used before they choose to use groundwater. Areas that are domestic only service in the LOID district, Canyon Crest, Northeast Crossing, Tammany Vista, and Skyview, they are only eligible for domestic water because we cannot expand our irrigation districts currently because of litigation with the Nez Perce tribe. So those areas then would be eligible to use their groundwater that's applied, that they pay for by the gallon for their outside landscaping needs. And so that's how the law came to be, and we are here tonight to testify that we are in support of the city's efforts to codify what's already law, but to put it into your comprehensive plan. And we really appreciate the efforts of the city staff that they've done to integrate this into the comprehensive plan so that we are using our resources as wisely as we can.
Oh, please go for it, Cynthia.
So for clarity, because I'm trying to get my head around what we're really addressing, is it when a developer wants to change a zone request to create a PUD or something like that, they end up having to put in the stormwater drainage lines? No,
Simply how the property would get serviced with water. So if you currently live within the irrigation district boundaries that gets both irrigation and domestic water, we deliver two services to your house. One of them being your domestic water that goes inside for your culinary drinking purposes, and then your outside irrigation.
yeah,
On our domestic only, they only get domestic water. But the stormwater portion of this, the sewer portion of this, that is not affected by this law. It's just to ensure that if a land parcel is eligible for both irrigation and domestic water, since the majority of our irrigation water comes from a surface water source off of Craig Mountain,
Yeah.
that they install the infrastructure necessary to use that resource before they're tapping into the groundwater and putting that additional strain on that. And I would tell you that this has never really been an issue in the LOID for the past 120 years until about 5 years ago. And now we are starting, we have a development that slid in before this became state law. And it's going to be a complication for the patrons of the district and for LOID. And we just had somebody else the other day that bought a service and the developer elected to not purchase the irrigation portion because it saves them money. But now the landowner is going to be required to pay an irrigation assessment, and they're going to have to spend money out of their pocket to be able to access that, but they're still going to get an irrigation assessment regardless because those lands have been obligated. So the greater good that's coming out of this is the cities and the states and LOID's effort to try to preserve and extend the groundwater out as long as we possibly can while using surface waters that are available to the citizens of the city.
I appreciate that.
So my question is, so if you're currently within LOID or whatever, but just using domestic water for your, like the development you were talking about, are they sort of grandfathered in or do they have to change?
So anything that's prior to that July 1st is grandfathered in.
Okay.
And there's not very many situations where that doesn't exist currently. But that's the one that eventually is probably most likely what's going to end up happening is somebody's going to request irrigation service off of the irrigation assessment that they're paying. LOID will have to extend the main so that they can buy the service then to tap and access that water. That surface water that we use in the orchards is not only used for irrigation purposes, but it provides 90% of the firefighting protection in the orchard. So if you see a yellow fire hydrant in the orchards, that's irrigation water. If you see a red fire hydrant in the orchard, that's domestic water.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Nothing else was written, called, emailed in? Probably already asked that question, sorry. So is there any other testimony from the public? Doesn't look like it. All right, well, if there are no additional questions for staff commission, are we good with closing the public hearing and deliberating? Perfect, all right. Then I will close the public hearing. Jen, we didn't have any specific criteria we had to assess this on. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
No, there's no specific criteria to assess this on.
And I guess we can just assess as a commission. I mean, it sounds like this is just codifying existing state law into the city's comprehensive plan. And I think it will assist the city long term.
Well, and as somebody who is a Lloyd, irrigation client,
Mhm.
I appreciate the fact that I know exactly what my irrigation is going to cost me on an annualized basis. I get the irrigation bill.
Yep.
And the one thing I will have yet to understand is why is there are any dry lawns? Dry property in the orchards, because you're paying for it,
Yes.
but it just, yeah. No, it makes it nice, and I don't know, I feel bad for people who maybe live in the orchards now and are buying new houses and property and finding out that they don't have
That they don't have.
they
those
don't have
rights.
that secondary irrigation and they're using domestic water. And if we can alleviate pressure on the domestic side
Yeah.
with our growth.
Yeah.
Or,
I think I understood correctly, it was a punchy day. That if these are not implemented and people use domestic, then what they're doing is they're drawing down, resources are gonna be further and further tapped.
Yeah.
And or the city will end up having to extend their irrigation lines.
Yeah. Will increase, which will increase fees.
On the cost of
Yeah.
the city, not.
Yeah, which means it's gonna be transferred to the average person though, because that's.
I understand that. Okay.
Commission, any other thoughts?
Right.
Then I will go ahead and make a motion to direct staff to recommend to the city council to approve CPA 25-1 as presented.
second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, I think this is the last. This is the last action item on our agenda. So we have another public hearing. So this is a public hearing and subsequent deliberation and direction to staff regarding the reason statement for conditional use permit application by Tony Havens. So the public hearing process will be the same. Public will have an opportunity to present after staff presents. And then we will close the public hearing and then we will deliberate. So with that, I'll open the public hearing and take it away.
Evening Commission, Katie Hollingshead, this is the planner in front of you tonight. This is conditional use permit 25-5. This is request for animal rights in the low density residential R2A zone. And there is also with this application, a request for waiver of standard. So, like usual, we're gonna look at some maps and then some photos. So our subject property is located at 1520 Warner Ave. It is a 0.69 acre parcel. You can see it right here outlined. Has a single family dwelling, has an outbuilding, has a pasture area. Same map with our zoning layer on top. So subject property is located in the R2A zones. Surrounding properties to the east, to the south, and to the west are also R2A. Across the street to the north, up here is zoned PUD, planned unit development. And up there exists the Northeast Crossing planned unit development. Again, same map, but with our comp plan future land use map layer turned on. So our subject property is located in our neighborhood residential future land use map designation. Properties to the north, west, and south are also this designation. That's this red color. Property to the east is considered open space. And this is where the Idaho Fish and Game offices and nature path are located. So it starts here, it goes all the way to the corner of 16th. And Warner, pretty large parcel, so you can see it completely borders the east side of our subject property. Then finally, this photo is included in your packet. So this is the request for waiver of standards. So outlined is the dedicated pasture area for the animals. So city code requires that you have 1/2 acre of dedicated pasture area. That's code section 37-197. The applicant has a livestock area of approximately 14,335 square feet. So this would be a reduction in that total size of 34.2% from the required 21,780 square feet. And then we're gonna look at some photos so you can see what everything looks like on the ground. So this is our subject property, single family dwelling. We're just gonna pivot around. So now I'm looking east. So this is the Idaho Fish and Game property. So you can see it's a wooded, treed, bushed, kind of wildlife recreation area. So no homes on this whole section. You can see some of their buildings down here. It's a pretty large campus. Pivoting, you can see this is a stretch of Warner Avenue going east. You can see single family dwellings along there. This is the house across the street, again, single family dwellings. More single family dwellings going west, again, down Warner. And then the neighboring properties. In the staff report, I do call out that the neighboring properties on the west side adjacent and on the south side adjacent are all similar in size to the subject property. So they're all slightly larger lots, are all 1/2 acre or bigger. And then the lots that are across the street in Northeast Crossing, those are smaller lots. It's PUD, smaller required lot sizes. Over there, you're looking at 8,000 square feet to a lot for a majority of them. And then looking in the backyard, this is that dedicated pasture area. So I'm standing, so it's fenced off from like the actual backyard that goes with the home. So I'm standing in the corner. You can see there's some sheep. A little munching. So I'm kind of at the eastern corner of it, looking across. See, there's some trees. It's fenced all the way around. And pivoted, so this tree line right here is the tree line that lines up with Idaho Fish and Game property. And then walking to the other side, so now I'm on the western property edge. And you can see the fence line here, this is the neighbor's shed. And you can see how it kind of abuts other people's backyards back here. And then just looking kind of down the stretch of backyards, you can see the neighboring properties' backyards. Also included in your packet were some letters from adjacent neighbors saying that they support the application, that the applicant has previously had animals there in a 4-H capacity. They liked having the animals there, it helps keep the weeds down. And you can see from this map that these other folks also have large backyards that abut the subject property's backyard. So animal rights are kind of weird in our current comp plan. In our previous one, they were called out specifically. They're not called out specifically in our existing comp plan, but there were a couple of sections that do apply. And I included those in the staff report for you guys to review. So one was LU 1.3, which states that we should balance land uses and establish land use patterns that accommodate various land uses in proportion to the needs of community. A lot of times we talk about this particular goal from the comp plan when it applies to kind of being creative with your property. I wouldn't say that this is being creative with your property. The R2A zone was kind of designed specifically to allow for animals. That's why the A is in the title of the zone. and is designated. That's why. And is really kind of situated towards that more eastern orchards segment of town where the lots are of this larger size, like we're seeing with both our subject property and the adjacent neighbor properties. And the other one, and this one kind of goes with what we just talked about in our comprehensive and ground versus surface water, is goal NH 2.4, which states protect groundwater quality and improve stormwater quality and encourage the reduction of pollutants and potential contaminants. Utilization of animals to keep vegetation at bay is a less pollutant rich method than using some sort of fertilizer or chemical spray to take care of unwanted vegetation. And so the not using those sorts of chemicals could be seen as a tool to protect groundwater resources such as our Lindsay Creek watershed, which is right around the corner from here. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Yeah, so I see that he's asking for up to 5 sheep or 1 steer. So what kind of limitations would we put on this if we decide to go forward with it?
So you could choose to limit it more than that. Those numbers are specifically pulled from code for what you could have with that half acre. So I don't know what page this is in your big
It's
packet.
36.
The 36, but 7 in mine. So allowable number of animals. So for the first half acre of livestock area, you could have 1 horse or 1 cow or steer. You could have 2 llamas. You could have 5 sheep, goats, alpacas, ostriches, or emus. All of those would fall under that category. The applicant specifically said he was most interested in having sheep, like the ones you saw on the property that were currently cleaning up the vegetation, or perhaps a steer to do the same thing. But unless the commission chooses to put a further limit with your approval of the waiver of standard from that half-acre requirement, any of those 3 animal types would be allowed in those numbers listed in code.
Oh, go for it, Kevin.
So, is the waiver from the lot size requirement?
Yes, from the dedicated pasture area.
Right,
So the lot in total would be considered large enough, but code specifically says you have to have half acre of dedicated livestock area. And the applicant only has that 14,335 square feet of dedicated livestock area.
right. My question is, that it's not, we don't have to make a separate decision on that specific thing on top of the animal rights?
No, it's a request as part of the request for the animal rights. Yep, they go hand in hand. He's asking to have animal rights granted for his property. And as part of that request, have the waiver of standard from the half acre to allow for the 14,335 feet of
Okay,
animal area.
thank you.
Are there any other questions for Katie, Commission?
I have
Oh.
one question.
Go for it, sorry.
And animal rights are use permitted outright or use permitted with a CUP?
In the R2A, I think is permitted with the CUP. In our R1 zone and our F2 zone, they're by right.
Okay.
In the R2A, it requires that CUP.
I don't see any other questions from any of you. I will open up to testimony from the applicant regarding this application. Just say your name and city of residence.
Tony Havens, Lewiston, Idaho.
Thank you.
So, I'm assuming you guys have all read through my letter and the other letters from the neighbors and things like that. I know it might be kind of redundant to say some of those things, but, the idea behind it, I bought the property, from my brothers a couple of years ago. Our dad passed away. That's the house that we all grew up in. Ironically, in the eighties, I raised sheep back in there. At that time, we had animal rights. You know, in the nineties and early two thousands, my dad didn't have any animals there or anything like that. And it got very much overgrown. The neighbors, would ask him to mow it down for fire hazards and just aesthetics as well. So when I bought the property, I don't know if you're familiar with the collection that my dad had of things at that house, but it was pretty messy. So my wife and I spent 1 year cleaning it up and 1 year fixing it up. So that pasture area in the back was always kind of an intention of, to be able to maintain it a little bit cleaner. I haven't been watering it this year like I had last year, mostly because I didn't want to have to mow it so much. But those sheep were from a professor up at University of Idaho that I had at my pasture. I'm farther out in the orchards and I have some pasture, and I asked him if it'd be okay to eat that down. He said, that's fine. So they were there just for a couple of weeks to eat that down. Yeah, my intention is either to put a few sheep on there, I know it's capped at 5, or 1 steer. And the purpose of the steer would be partly to fatten up a steer, but also to eat it down. It would never have an animal of any kind on it year round, ever. It would be, for a month or however long it would take to eat it down, kind of thing. There's farther to the west of that, there was a conditional use permit granted some years back to a different family for a couple of horses. So I noticed that. I don't know how long ago that was, but yeah, that's kind of the intention. It's kind of twofold. Fire management, aesthetics, as well as just a place to put an animal temporarily to kind of let my pasture catch up.
Questions?
So Jennifer Togano, City Attorney, I noticed the property is co-owned. Would you be able to get the signature of the co-owner of the property,
Who's still owned by?
Nicole Havens?
Oh, that's my wife.
So she's not signed, she didn't sign the application, and city code requires the property owners to sign the application. And so we'll need her signature on this.
Kind of busy right now. She's at a different meeting, but otherwise I'd have her come right down and.
Because otherwise, I'd recommend that the commission make any approval if they should grant it, conditioned upon getting the signature of the co-owner of the property.
Tony, so I know in your letter you talk about that you have irrigation for that part. Since we,
Well, just a hydrant, a new hydrant.
right, and since we just talked about groundwater and all that stuff, is that irrigation or is it domestic?
Oh, it's irrigation.
All right. Just double-
I'd be broke if I did domestic.
Thanks.
Looks like an irrigation hydrant to
Shows the
it.
answer. I thought I'd read that he was some. No, you're right.
Yes.
Well, perfect. Then we will let you go. So,
Good.
Dawn, was there any emails, phone calls, other than what we have in our packet? Are we good to close the public hearing?
Public testimony?
Oh, okay. Any public testimony other than what we have? Perfect. All right. Now we're good to close the public hearing. It's been a day. Yeah. All right. We will close the public hearing. Now we will deliberate based on the relevant criteria and standards. So, Commission, I know we have our cheat sheet here on our here, so that, all right, so number 1 for relevant criteria and standards is the proposed use will or will not result in conditions that will tend to generate nuisances such as noise, dust, glare, vibrations, and odors, or if so, any anticipated nuisances will be appropriately mitigated. and I'll just let anybody who wants to jump in on these.
So those were addressed in the application process as far as any particularly vocal livestock would be relocated. And I believe the plan was already in place as far as waste removal.
And if anything, this is meant to mitigate nuisances, not generate
Yeah,
new
thistles.
nuisances. Yeah, when you're talking about a pasture, and weeds and thistles and everything else. So I will say will not result in conditions that will tend to generate nuisances.
I mean, I would go the opposite on it, saying that it will create nuisances, because let's face it, animals create noise and they create odor. But I do believe that any anticipated nuisances have been addressed to be appropriately mitigated.
It's a swap of nuisances, so I agree with you.
Yeah. I don't think it's any unwarranted nuisances by any, but they're critters. Critters are gonna critter.
That's true. It's true. I can see that perspective.
So we're going with will or will not?
Will. Say will.
Will, but
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 will
they
they
will
will
be mitigated.
appropriately
will be
mitigated.
mitigated, yes. All right, number two, the proposed use is or is not a public necessity but is or is not justified by the applicant and deemed to be a benefit to the public.
I would bounce in there and say that the adjacent property owners have made very clear that they are very much looking forward to the positives of having livestock in that space, because it does abut their properties, and when it goes unattended, you have thistles and, yeah, so.
Fire control.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And those, when you have weeds and upgrowth like that, it doesn't stay within that fence line. It does branch over. And so having the appropriate animals, which, let's face it, is the best mitigation that you can possibly do, as opposed to chemicals or fire burning or something along those lines. So I think that it is definitely justified.
Are we going with is or is not a public necessity? Is not,
Is.
It's not a public necessity, but
right,
it
right,
is
but
justified
it
by the
is
applicant
justified by the applicant.
and deemed to be a benefit.
Can you clarify why it's not a public necessity, but maybe more of like a private
Yeah,
or personal?
It is, it's, it's not going to have a huge effect on the public at large. It's not, it's not necessarily that he's opening a space that's gonna be for public use. So multiple people are gonna be able to pasture 4-H animals, et cetera, although that certainly would be an option. But, so it is private, but it does have an immediate effect on the immediate neighbor.
Yes.
Benefiting the immediate.
And it does
neighbors, not
benefit the
public.
immediate neighborhood.
Neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Neighborhood.
And in the public category, if in fact there were fire or something took place in that area, that would actually be fodder for more fire and create a big problem
Mhm.
bigger.
Absolutely.
So in that way, it does a nod to public.
Yes, it helps the public as the fire or wildfire reduction strategy.
So we're good with calling it is a public necessity?
Sure.
I mean, I don't have a bone either way, but I just want to make sure we're capturing the commission's thoughts correctly.
No, I'm out of order, but this could, it literally be like a fire break. If that's the topic we're talking.
I would still say is not public necessity, but is.
But it's
justified.
justified by the
Right,
applicant.
right,
Yeah, I think I think it's splitting hairs either way.
But it
It's justified by the
It's
applicant.
between a necessity and a
Right,
benefit.
yeah,
It's not a necessity, but it is a huge benefit.
yes, I mean, I think when I think of public necessity, I think of broader than a neighborhood. I can definitely see Cynthia and Maureen, your perspective on it being a fire mitigation. But I think broader when it comes to public necessity. which generally means it's more vague, like more housing in the valley or something like that.
Yeah.
It is specific to the community where the housing will be located, but housing is a need in the community.
Yeah.
Any housing technically could qualify for that. So, but either way, I think it's justified by the applicant,
Absolutely.
so.
Okay.
All right, so number 3 is the character of the proposed use, if developed according to the plan as submitted, will or will not be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located. And I would argue
absolutely
it will,
be.
yes. I think the fact that the neighbors were on board with this and also animals won't be there year
Well,
round.
and as the applicant indicated, there are other animals, livestock
Yes.
animals in the region.
Yeah,
And as Katie brought to our attention, that was the entire purpose of R2A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
yes,
And it abuts the nature preserve. So
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
All the lot sizes are big enough, so you're not.
Yeah, you're not,
Yeah.
yeah, you're not crunched,
No.
yeah,
And especially where it's only going to be a seasonal type of a thing.
yeah. All right, so number 4, the proposed use will or will not endanger the environment or the public health or safety.
Will not
They
endanger the
will.
environment. In fact, it'll be a benefit.
It'll be,
Yeah.
I agree. But we could argue that it will mitigate public danger.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it
As
will,
long as it keeps the fences up.
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
will also help with the goal of protecting the groundwater and reducing.
Absolutely.
yes.
And keep your fingers crossed that the existing neighbors remain, because God forbid.
Well, it'll
And
be,
somebody's allergic, but
It's into the comprehensive plan, the NH two.
Yeah.
All right, number 5, the proposed use will or will not be in substantial conformance with the comprehensive plan.
That was LU
Yes, it was
2.3.
Yeah,
And then the
Balance land uses.
NH.
yeah. I would just reference the staff
Yep.
report when it comes to
Absolutely.
being in compliance or conformance with the comprehensive plan.
well, and especially with the new additive for the, the groundwater usage
Yeah.
and things like that.
Separate.
All right, number 6, pursuant to Idaho Code 67-6512, conditional use permits or a conditional use permit may be granted subject to the ability of political subdivisions, including school districts, to provide services for the proposed use.
I think the applicant already indicated that he's on irrigation water, which benefits that area tremendously, so.
And in
And
the
it
packet,
says-
the fire department.
Yeah, we didn't,
You
yeah,
know, everybody said. they're
it
cool
was
with it.
fine, yeah, yeah.
I would also probably note that there is or was a representative from Lloyd present during the testimony period, and they didn't provide comment.
Yeah.
And, as staff report notes too, notice was given to the political subdivisions that would be
Did not.
affected, and
did
they
not
didn't.
have any
comment
issues.
on-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Public Works said no objections.
Yeah, so I think that all those things are relevant. And then number 7, the proposed rezone is or is not in conformance with Idaho Code 67-6537, use of surface and groundwater.
That it is.
Yep,
It's
Yes.
stated by the applicant that they're, the groundwater, or not the groundwater,
Lloyd, Lewiston Orchard
The,
Irrigation.
so,
Well,
irrigation.
and as Attorney Tengano also pointed out, we have Lloyd people here during the hearing and
and they didn't have any issues.
no.
Yeah. All right, commission, well, with that, is there any additional discussion? Do we want to put any conditions on this other than what was discussed by
As far as the signature.
Jen?
I think that would be the only condition that we
That's
need
the
to
only
put forward.
condition I would think of.
Perfect. All right, well, if somebody is ready to take a motion, I will take a motion to direct staff to draft a reasoned statement with the proposed condition and waiver included.
I will make said motion to
Uh,
direct staff.
Hold on. So you addressed the CUP so far. Now addressing the waiver, is there anything in your reason statement you would like to add specific to the waiver itself?
Yeah, that's what I was asking her.
Oh, if we need an
Because
additional.
I knew it was gonna come up.
The waiver.
So there's no specific criteria in granting or approving the waiver of the size standard.
Oh, okay.
So there's not anything specific you have to actually address.
Good.
I would recommend, if you are inclined to grant it, to condition it on the identification of the animals and the number. That's helpful in an enforcement side of things.
Well, I have another question. A CUP normally goes with the land. Can we just have this one just go with the particular landowner?
If you want to make that a condition, you could.
You get
But
It's
I
probably
just
easier
throwing
to
it out there.
enforce something like the number of animals or type of
Yeah.
animals.
Okay.
Because the city is not always notified when properties change hands.
well, and there's not anything that, even if it was the same owner, there's nothing to say that it couldn't be leased out
Right.
or anything of that nature. So the number and the type of animals tends to be easier to enforce. Especially where you have a waiver of a standard where the exact number it might not be clear.
I would be okay with a steer or with up to 5 sheep for a limited amount of time.
Do you have an idea of what kind of limited amount of time? Because that is probably too ambiguous to enforce.
Exactly.
I think when you're referring to a limited amount of time, you're talking about how
Summer.
the applicant discussed it not being, they're not being there all the time, year round,
6
so.
months, maybe from
I don't-
April through.
Well, that could be hard to.
I'm
Yeah.
murky about that.
Well, I know that Lloyd has a specific animal irrigation period annually. I can't remember exactly when it is, but I know I've addressed it in other animal issues.
So we can put that in.
And I can get that information and include it.
So we
Because it's,
Say
That
that
sounds
to
good.
be.
Coincide with-
Performance.
it's roughly like March to
Yeah.
late October.
Yeah,
So
it's the
just
end of
to-
March to the end of October. I believe.
Whatever the Lloyd's
So
animal.
just to clarify, in the application, the applicant did said his request is to have a steer or 2 or 5 sheep.
2
so
through 5.
Between 2 to 5 sheep.
Yeah, between 2 to
Up
5,
to
but
5,
that
up
is
to 5
within, that
sheep.
is within the standard if he met
Right.
the half acre.
Yes,
Um,
but I think that goats would be okay too.
Well, and sheep and goats generally fall in the same categorization, so I think that if we open it up to that, you know.
Well, with respect to the reduction in square footage, the code specific to square footage. I would argue that based on the proposed use, a reduction in size for non-full-time resident beasties, they wouldn't, the reduction in the lot size would not necessarily impact the use. The reduction in, I guess what I'm saying is if they're only there temporarily, they're not 24 or 12
Right.
months. They're not going to burn through all the resources.
Right.
And need that extra 6,000 square feet.
Yeah. It's not a one-to-one in the perspective of, we're talking 12-month time frame. So you can look at it from a 1-to-1 and be like, oh, it's half the space, so go from 5 to 3.
Right, so we live on about 14,400 square foot lot, and I think about if nothing was on it, and it was just the animals, I would be a little hinky about sheep because they can mow something down pretty good and keep it
Oh,
to the
yeah.
point where it's a nub. But I don't know that 6,000 additional square feet would really change that.
Yeah. Not in the shortened time
No.
frame. You know, you look at people who keep 4-H animals.
Mhm.
And, you know, especially for families who do it. And, you know, I grew up in 4-H and we always had sheep.
Well, and as steer, nobody keeps them forever because they're ungodly to feed. They usually
Yeah.
take them to market.
Usually.
Never
Unless you're
Jennifer.
If he irrigates, he'd have more meat.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think in the proposed use that the reduction of those 6,000 square feet would make a marked difference. It,
To add to that is, I mean, as the applicant had stated, there were animals there in the past
Prior.
on the same property, so.
Well, and I think too, we're looking at the difference between somebody who's looking to house animals on a long-term basis, you know, throughout the entire summer versus somebody who is looking at putting the animals on the property for the specific intent
Yeah.
of controlling the weeds and the grass and everything else. So there's a big difference between somebody who's
It was
Yeah.
also mentioned that he'd be bouncing them back from his
Yeah.
existing
pasture.
pasture
Mhm.
as a, go graze that for a little while, and
Yeah.
let this rest, so.
So
There's also,
Yeah, it sounds like we're putting the time
Let's get-
frame in.
back to,
and I,
go ahead.
there's also a lack of public testimony from anyone else about the reduction in size.
Yes.
in the
Just
waiver.
true. Yep, nobody's complaining. Most excellent point. Yes.
So
Yes.
back to Jennifer's point on, and Kathy's discussion of a time frame. Have we covered that? Or do we need to say, like, in concurrence with Lloyd's season?
Well, depending on what you want,
Yeah.
then yeah, I would ask that you identify it. You can leave it open to the Lloyd's, animal irrigation season and I can get those specific dates. Or we can just leave it as that. Or you can say, March to October. Really, it's the preference of the commission on how you want to limit that.
Well, I think for continuity, it would be good to link it to Lloyd's animal irrigation timeframe, just because that we're not the ones setting that timeframe. That's something that's set by people who, that's their expertise and that's what they do. So I think by putting it, locking it into what the applicant himself requested, so the steer, 2 to 5 sheep.
Yeah.
I think is reasonable. That's what he's asking for and that's what fits within code.
Yeah,
I
that
think
fits
that's
within
perfectly reasonable. And so, as far as the waiver is dealt with, I think just adding that timeframe and holding the applicant to what he requested specifically animal wise.
Sounds
I
good.
agree.
So I'm gonna respectfully disagree. I don't feel like we need to propose any limitations on this. Would we propose the same limitations if it was a use? Not allowed by right, but if it was, if there wasn't a waiver, would we question this or change it from city code? And I don't see a reason to limit it. I just don't see what that does for us. I could see a reason to include the animal number for a tracking purpose and an enforcement purpose, but not.
I think the biggest concern I would have in that is that right now we're dealing with a situation where we've got, somebody who's, very specific about what they're wanting. But as we talked about, a CUP goes with the property. So if we kind of open in the CUP and kind of, that doesn't necessarily mean that 2 years from now, somebody's not gonna come in and try to put 20 sheep on there and,
The
that
city code would still not allow that.
theoretically,
It would
Yeah,
still be limited to 5, like, he's not asking for anything over city code and nor does the area allow any more than the 2 to 5.
I think there's, with the limitations on the property itself, I think there's self-enforcement factors that lessen my concern about specifically putting in a time frame. That's kind of my perspective on it.
And if I may, I'm hearing concern about future owners down the road, and any future owner that decides to take on animals can make the decision to water them or not water them. And that is not, I think, on us to eyeball and address. I think if we're going to waive the 6,000 square additional feet, then we have him meet the code that comes along with the CUP. Correct. Period.
I agree.
yeah.
That's my take.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna,
No, that would make sense.
Shay, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking future wise. I mean, the only thing I could think of is how do we maybe this is a discussion for later, how do we navigate this if we have more instances like this where people are asking, you know, for their acreage, if it's 30% like his, like how do we effectively navigate that? Future
Because it is
wise,
setting
like
the
do,
precedence.
and I think code enforcement wise, it's a lot easier to help animals. I would think
I
than
mean,
to try to.
I mean, I think the way I look at it with precedent setting for this is there's a lot of variables involved in reviewing a waiver that go beyond just the type of enforcement mechanism. So what I mean by that is if the property is incapable of sustaining, 5 sheep for an extended period of time, that's something that has to be considered when we're looking at a waiver, if we see something similar to this or not. So I think I can see that perspective, but also with precedent, if you're throwing into your consideration variables specific to that property, that does tend to limit your precedent, because in your precedent, you have basically said some of the things involved in your decision are based on the specific parameters of that
location,
property.
yeah.
Okay, I think one way to actually easily measure that. And this is a very loose number, I didn't do the math, because I don't have the numbers exact, well, I do, I guess, never mind. Anyway, so we're looking at, he's asking for a reduction if the full 20-something is 100% of what is required by code, he is asking for essentially a 30% reduction.
Mhm.
So he has 70%
70%.
of the land required. So if you wanted to start figuring out how we mitigate it coming down there, I think it would be easy for the commission to have a number in mind that makes sense. And it, maybe not 50%, maybe it's, 55 or 60% reduction in square footage requirements. But at the end of days, he's not necessarily putting 5 sheep on there, and he's not necessarily keeping them there 12 hours or 12 months out of the year. So I think that if you wanted to figure out how we set a precedent, consider the percentage of the reduction that he's asking for.
I know what I was getting at. How
Yeah,
do we
yeah.
just make it fair across the board, whether or not he's doing it for
Mhm.
9 months, 12 months.
Well, one of the concerns on an enforcement basis is if you're gonna reduce it on that kind of percentage, if the request is for 1 steer, you can't have 70% of the steer present at the
Oh,
property.
man.
Well, you can, but
Just
not in fact.
Well, we're thinking about a reduction in the square footage, not the.
I'm gonna say that I agree with Emily, and even though I talked about, how to tie it in, I'm not for, us playing a timeframe or
I
a
know.
time constraint as far as that goes. So, yeah, I mean,
I like the time constraint. I like it tied to.
Then make a
LOA.
motion.
we don't all have to agree.
I will say, that I think that I can understand both perspectives on this. I will say I'm not a fan of the time constraint requirements, because we can only judge an application based on the applicant that we have in front of us. I can't judge, I understand that CUPs follow the property, but we can only go off, and maybe it's just me, I only go off the application that is in front of me. The applicant has said that he's gonna put 2 or 5 sheep there. And there's no indication that this is going to be abused one way or the other, so I am in favor of not putting in the time requirement.
So, are we,
One additional thought is of Kathy's concerns. So we have a loose 2 to 5 sheep. We cannot split a steer. But based on 70% of space, you can modify the numbers of sheep you're confident and comfortable with. No, don't roll your eyes. I'm just respecting
No, I wasn't rolling.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
wasn't
I mean,
rolling
My
my eyes.
concern is you keep an animal through the winter on that lot, it could become a bare lot. You get mud, you get manure, it's harder to take care of. That's my concern, as being lived on a farm in the middle of a feedlot, actually. And so that's what I am seeing. You have 5 sheep there all year long. And he's not doing that, but in the future, during the winter, in December, you get mud, crap,
Okay.
et cetera. That's what I'm
But
picturing.
if you want to consider reduction in the numbers, playing some what if, and they're gonna be there to 12 months, then you have to, by the code, determine, are we only gonna allow 3 sheep? And where are we at with the remaining potential animals? That's the.
I'm okay with the number of animals. I'm not okay with extending the time. I like this, the LOID time idea. But that's personal for me.
I understand,
Yeah.
but
So. Process to,
So I would recommend first making a decision on the waiver. And you can apply or not apply any conditions that you wish. My suggestions were just recommendations from an enforcement perspective. And then, once you made a decision on that, then you can vote on the application itself. And directing staff to draft a reasoned statement that reflects your decision today.
So I think we're all in agreement on the waiver.
Yes.
That's what I'm
Yes.
hearing. We're just in
We're-
disagreement on the provisions of the waiver.
Yes, the conditions.
So,
I'm just one person.
well, no, well,
That's
why you're here.
that's what I was asking is because if it's all one motion. We would go like, granting the conditional use permit. And the waiver with X, Y, and Z
Right.
conditions. And then we vote on that.
Mhm.
Or we have the conditional use permit with the waiver and not X, Y, Z, and we vote on that kind of thing.
Does the waiver need a formal, does the waiver need a formal vote separate from the CUP, or is the waiver
No, that's
part of
all
this?
part
There's not a particular procedural requirement either way. It just might be easier for the commission to break it up. And that way one is not dependent on the other.
So I think we brought up 2 separate issues as it pertains to the waiver. Quantity of animals and time frame.
Yes.
So I think we need to take a vote on whether or not we want any restrictions on number of animals. And whether or not we want any restrictions on the time frame.
Okay.
And whatever we vote on that, that's where we're at. I think that my personal thought process on the number of animals is, I think I agree with Emily in the fact that city code already calls that out.
I agree with that.
And
But everybody needs to be on the same boat,
if everyone wants to take,
or majority of us.
we could always take a recess and you can think over how someone wants to make a motion. And you can make that motion, or you can do as Commissioner Anderson has proposed and do two motions potentially, one about the time limitation, one about the number of animals. And then you'd need a third motion to approve the waiver as you decide or not approve it.
Then the
Really, I mean, this is your decision that you have to make. And so however you'd like to do it, I am here to support you in the process.
So are we comfortable with doing a tally of who is in favor of? Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, no, go ahead, I'm sorry.
As I say, are we comfortable with doing a tally of who's in favor of time limitations, who's in favor of a number of animals? And going from there?
And by tally, do you mean a roll call vote?
Yes, I was going to point at everybody.
Tally ho.
So, okay, so we will start, or I will start with the number of animals. Cynthia, do you have any concerns with the number of animals? Or do you have any limitations you want to throw on there different than what the applicant has presented in their application?
I do not.
Emily,
I do not.
Shay?
Can you make sure you speak up?
Not necessarily, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking future wise, like I don't, with what he's brought to us, I don't see a problem. I'm just thinking future wise, how do we navigate.
mention something in that subject is, how long has the Havens family owned this property?
That was not presented in the.
I know, but I mean, we're just talking about like, I don't know the family well. I have the common knowledge of they've been there a pretty long time. I'm not worried about future. That's where I'm at. on
Well, I'm
that.
just saying if we were to have other people come to us that are in the R2A zone, like with a similar,
And
think
reduce the
we
number
have
of
to-
animals.
But
we
we're
have
not,
to do it.
We have
by-
to, we still have to look at the merits of theirs. I don't think that it's fair to try to have, yes, we're setting a precedent, but are we setting a precedent that everyone who is asking for a third of their reduction in size, like, there's so many conditions that you'd have to meet to set that precedent? And where, each land use or each,
It's a case by case.
it's,
basis.
yeah, you have to
Yes,
review
yes,
all
yes.
of the information and all the information given. That he is a 4-H leader, he has been at that property, the animals have been at that property. I have no reason to think that he would not be a good steward of the land and utilize it appropriately.
Well, and like we referenced previously, the neighbors are on
Exactly.
board and there's
There's
no
no
opposition,
Yes.
so.
So Kevin, you don't have any concerns with the number? of
not
animals?
outside what's already stated in code, right?
I do not. Kathy?
I'm okay with it. I would just like to see, he's asking for a steer and 5 sheep. So,
No,
or,
you're-
or 5 sheep, yeah, up to 5 sheep. And so I'm not sure what we're addressing. Are we doing code? Does code allow for a horse? I can't remember on that
Yes.
size.
Horse or steer.
Are we okay with code or?
Yeah, so single large. Or reduce the number in multiple small. That's it. That's our options there.
Say that again.
You can't split a steer or a horse, so a single large animal. Or do you want to address the number of smaller animals?
Well, I'm picturing if you have a horse, then you're gonna want it there all year round. It's not going to be a temporary.
Yeah, but we can't
No, we
eliminate
can't.
from this waiver. I mean,
I know.
I think you're borrowing trouble and I appreciate why you're thinking that direction because we don't know what future people are intending to do and the CUP follows the property. I get that. But the only option I think that we have is not how long they get to keep them because nobody else that gets the CUP. Not that I have exposure or experience to that, are probably limited to how long they get to keep the animals. That's been introduced because of his state testimony about the temporary placement. So the only thing that I think this commission has the opportunity to do based on the reduction of required 20,000 plus square feet is to reduce the number of allowed animals. That would be the only thing that I think that we could address that would restrict it from, because there is a waiver being requested. I think that's the only thing that would make sense to restrict based on the reduction in space available.
You think some more about it, you can do your thing.
Well, I think we've already got a majority vote.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
do.
have a problem with the number of animals. I think that it's as long as it's in compliance with city code already. I think that that's the governing force.
Do another roll call, and this one is related to the time condition. So we'll, again, Cynthia, I'll start with you.
I do not support a time condition.
Okay. Emily, sorry,
I do not support a time condition.
Shay,
I do not support condition.
Kevin,
I do not.
I do not.
And I do.
And I still do, but that's
So-
why we're taking roll.
It's a majority that is not in favor of limiting the animals beyond what is in the application and what's in code, and a majority is not in favor of imposing a time condition.
Right.
So,
With that, I would be willing to make a motion to direct staff to draft the reason statement approving CUP 25-5 and the waiver with the condition that the co-owner signs the application. And I think we mentioned something about animal numbers.
That,
No, that was-
no, that
that
just,
was
that
waiver.
it, just, yeah,
Okay.
that just,
Okay.
yeah.
Number, like ID numbers, sorry, not the number of animals, the ID numbers of the animals.
I don't understand.
Oh, no.
Okay, nope, okay.
That's, that's.
I'm gonna,
In your head.
I'm gonna stop with, on the
Video.
condition, approving the CUP
And the waiver.
and the
The
waiver
waiver.
on the condition of the co-owner signing the application.
And I will second that motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, so all in favor of the reason statements, or I don't have the number in front of me. All in favor of approving the reason statement with the waiver, with the condition that the co-owner sign the application. Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, all right, motion carries. All right, thank you, Commissioner.
And I want, Kathy, I want you to know, I have been on farms before and I know what a field looks like when. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, so now up on our agenda is just staff commission communications, item number 4. Go for it, Katie.
Okay, so currently, we don't have any public hearings, so next meeting should be a short one with just reason statement and minutes. And then just a couple housekeeping items. So both Cindy and Kathy's terms are up in October. Cindy has chosen to continue with us and has submitted her application and been reappointed. Kathy is not going to continue with us. Her last meeting will be 10/8. I'll bring treats. And we have actually already received an application and interviewed and appointed a new member. So Zach Battles, who's a local attorney, will be joining us at the second meeting in October. I think that's all I got right now.
I have something, just to put it out, and it's a bit of a public PSA. The city has received notice that there have been scam emails being sent out to land use applicants, stating that they're being requested to pay an invoice associated with the approval of their applications.
Wow.
Shady.
Includes a mock invoice and instructions on how to wire transfer the payment.
Paying it like I call
We all know that the city wants to process wire transfers.
And they're using the city logo, they're
Yeah.
making it look very legitimate.
Yeah.
Signature block,
There-
it does look like a legitimate email. I mean, the email address is a little wonky, but otherwise it does look very.
Is there any funky language in it?
Well, I mean, it's coming from Plascon Joel sometimes, but otherwise, otherwise, they are using the information specific to the application. They're using the application number, they're including property details
Because it's in paper?
because it's publicly available.
Oh, so there-
As a part of the public hearing
What's the
notices,
term for that? Skimming? Or?
spear phishing is
Yeah.
typically what it's referred to. So just making sure that everyone is aware, and for the sake of the public record, that the city does not request payment for approval of an application. Staff is not in charge of making, the decision on approval of a land use application. Because that's kind of what it's saying, is that staff has approved your request. Please submit payment, for the approval. And so all land use decisions, anything that requires an application to be submitted requires
So
approval
now you're gonna
from
have to
the
explain to
commission.
everybody that applies that ignore that.
Well,
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
thankfully, the people that have received these emails have regular interactions with the city. So when
I just felt staff was like, what is this?
Yeah. everyone that has received one does have regular involvement, so they might not be as aware. And there may be people, there may be people who think that this is a part of the process. And so we're working on putting out a PSA. And to remind
And the
people.
email looks very, very.
Yeah,
legitimate.
they are getting.
Use a little bit of that energy and effort towards something positive.
So just making sure if you hear anything about it or you know, it comes up again, we'll continue to remind people, and then there should be public announcements, and it should make, a press release should be issued about it too.
Is it coming after city council votes or just after planning and zoning? Is there any timeline that they're seeing them?
When did you receive the one that you received?
Oh, you hadn't even
wow.
come in.
So it came out in the paper Sunday, so Monday I got it.
That's fast.
I would
figure as soon as it
Yes,
becomes
that's
Saying this
public
process
record,
was
when they
gonna
do.
be a little over $8,000.
Wow,
Yeah.
you didn't just write a check for that. That's
Gee,
weird.
yeah.
Like, what's going on, Katie, right?
They're,
Like,
they're
what is
too
this?
high.
We had two other applicants, that have had matters in front of us also receive, and again, one was $5,000, and I'm not sure what the other one was.
Oh,
It'd be even more
that's
realistic
good.
if they matched how much the actual application fee
Well,
was.
my.
I was gonna say, if they get
$80, that's not $80.
I know, no, I know.
Way more successful if they kinda.
We just don't get 50, you know, CUPs in a
nobody
meeting,
gets
so.
Well, get scammed.
Fascinating. I really like the creativity. I'm just here.
Go Sky.
Well, all they
But-
need is like one or two.
So we'll just
to
continue to remind people that the city does not, take payment in that matter. We would not send out an invoice,
We're not
after the
getting
fact
paid
for
for showing up.
approval.
Yeah, right?
Now that's the next conspiracy theory is look at we're making bank.
Right? Yeah,
that's
that's where we're getting it.
All right, well, before we get in that discussion, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved, seconded, all in favor? All right, meeting is adjourned, thank you.
Oh my gosh.
That's fascinating.
Why didn't we think of it for just?
Yeah. Maureen, have you been on the email lately?
I'm not that technologically savvy.
David, should I?
I'm trying.